So what brought you to a security token meetup?
I'm passionate about all things blockchain. Recently moved to LA area and had just kind of randomly stumbled upon it in the meetups kind of section there. Turns out I knew a couple people that were in attendance, and yeah, it's been good. The attendance was great today.
Yeah, you picked a good one.
Yeah.
So did you learn anything in particular? Did any takeaways from tonight?
Yeah, I think so. We're always still kind of trying to grasp the level of engagement and custodianship in terms of ownership of who really, and ownership is a huge thing, not within the blockchain space, but of just monetary systems and physical items. Who owns what? And I think a lot of the questions on this panel today kind of answered a step further, I think, to true ownership and really kind of how we value that and how we'll appropriate that moving forward.
And this is a hurdle that takes a lot of time and money and hiring the right attorneys and the right advisors and we're talking about compliance now. You can't just say you're doing something that's compliant and it's compliant because you said it was. You actually have to do filings and do things right and make sure that, everything is verified and done correctly. So, there are going to be more than 100, but when we talk about real ones actually trading, maybe 100.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. Like 100 that are going to be compliant with U.S. securities laws, which doesn't mean that all the other ones aren't going to be compliant. I mean, we have to remember just the one thing that STOs are like ICOs is that it's completely global. And there will be issuances outside of the U.S. by non-U.S. companies. And those are going to be just as legitimate as the U.S. ones, potentially. There's also going to be a lot of them that don't recognize that U.S. laws are more complex than laws in other jurisdictions at times, or more strict, and they're not going to comply with them. And if we add those in there, the ones that take it easy, or the infrastructure providers that say, hey, this is how you tokenize it by coming and creating this asset on our decentralized STO platform, we're going to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. But we're probably going to be close to 100 that are actually regulated.
There are so many reasons to have a custodian, right? But there are also a lot of challenges surrounding, does your custodian have the technology that matches well with what you're doing, right? So there are plenty of custodians out there who hold all types of assets, custodians that hold art and gold and money, but do they have the infrastructure necessary to connect to a blockchain? So if you want to custody something that's digital, now you're talking about looking for a tech company. So at Prime Trust, we call ourselves a tech-driven trust company because we're really very much focused on the technology that allows us to hold cryptocurrency.
What is an STO? What is a security token offering? And I think that a lot of people right now look at it as, all right, I take an asset and I tokenize it and I sell the tokens. And I think that process is completely backwards. And frankly, this might not make me super popular, but I think that this is actually significantly slowing down the adoption of security tokens. Because creating the token is not the most important part of the process. The most important part of the process is getting the deal funded.
Then the education part is the crazy thing. Like, you're absolutely right. Most of us, or a lot of us, came from the crowdfunding space, which is why we know way too much more than we ever want to know about the specific regulations around security tokens, right? Like, none of us, well, not none of us, but a lot of us are forgetting the lessons we learned in crowdfunding, which is just slapping crowdfunding on a deal is not going to make an investor want it. Yeah. It actually, if anything, can confuse them, 100%. Can signal that this company couldn't raise money any other way, so they're trying this newfangled thing. Tokens need to be an integral part of your company or reason why you're doing it, or it should make the product better maybe in the long term, but you don't have to lead with it. If you're leading with it, then you're probably not the greatest deal, because the deal, like the company or the piece of real estate or whatever it is that you are tokenizing, should be what you lead with.
What do you think is the prognosis for the security token space? Do you think it's, well, what do you think?
So I believe that it's going to take until about 2022, 2023. Those are my projections, and that's why I put myself on the boogie board, and all of us are right now, because the wave's coming soon. We just have to be patient.
Yes.
So I'm using that analogy, and all of us are on the boogie boards right now.
Yes.
And you set up a couple of different boogie boards, and you wait for the wave to come. And the wave's coming, and the security tokens are a big part of that wave.
Yeah, they're going to carry you to shore.
Yes.
the shore of wealth creation.
Yes.
We love it.
One of the things that everybody's going to remember is that offshore offerings were like the hot thing, especially once the SEC started cracking on things. The thought was, let's just sell our securities offshore and then we're going to be free. The question was always, there was legislation in the Dodd-Frank Act that actually addressed the fact that the SEC had very, very broad rights to actually go after anyone making a securities offering offshore. The Dodd-Frank Act essentially addressed that, but it was done at the same time as a Supreme Court offering, literally a month apart. Wording in the legislation was very strange. It was never clear whether they actually meant to address it and limit the SEC's jurisdiction or not. And essentially what we ended up seeing is about a couple years ago, there was a case where a district court essentially decided that, sure, the legislation didn't directly address it, but the legislator meant to address it. And now we've had an appeals court just a couple days ago, or a couple weeks ago, that have addressed it as well, and that basically said, yes, the Supreme Court was actually trying to go ahead and give the SEC some expansion of the SEC's jurisdiction.
In some ways, it's not different at all. It's just split ownership, and the markets will move. But there's a technology that's going to come in and basically change everything.